Good evening, brethren. For tonight's studies is Enoch, and I know a lot of you guys, or perhaps all, will be happy with that. For I know we've talked about it, and some of you are really well into the the knowledge given there, so it will be a blessing. Hanok, chapter 1. Hanok is the correct pronunciation of the name people pronounce as Enoch. Is Hanok. There are a couple ways in which they write it. Actually, both ways are, well, one is on the title and one is on the, well, one on the title of the video and one on the title of the book. Some people write it with the letter H as Hanok, but the letter in Hebrew is the Het. So it's a little bit stronger with the throat. So it's Hanok, Hanok. And that is why some people write it with a C and a H at the beginning, yet that tends to make people pronounce it Chanok sometimes. So just so you guys know, it is not Chanok, is not Hanok, it is Hanok. Has that sound at the beginning. And it means dedicated. That's why it sounds so similar to Hanukkah. The feast of Hanukkah has the same root, is the feast of dedication. When they dedicated the temple once again after it had been tainted by the abomination of desolation, which represents, of course, the false Messiah that would appear in the end, as Messiah explained. So Hanukkah means dedicated. Hanog, Hanukkah is dedication. Hanog is dedicated. As you guys know, also, there is another Hanog in the scriptures, which was the son of Cain. So some people have mistakenly thought that it was that Hanog who wrote this. Of course, it wasn't. This Hanog was the seventh from Adam through Seth and not through Cain. So just like we see throughout scriptures, Satan always tries to mirror everything that the Almighty does. So we see several copies of names at the very beginning of time. In fact, just in case anybody thinks about it, the first Enoch or Hanok was the son of Cain. And that was the name that Cain gave to the city that he built. So since Satan copies everything that the Almighty does, we see that there, but I just wanted to make sure that in this case, Cain gave the name first to one of his children, and then came the Hanok of Seth later in time. Even though some people will see that as being copied from the good side, my point is that obviously Satan has a broader view of history, being on a higher dimension. So he has copied many things throughout history in many ways, and not only Satan, Lucifer, but as we know, the other entities that are in rebellion against the Almighty. So verse 1 of chapter 1 reads, the blessing of Hanog with which he blessed the elect and the righteous who would be present on the day of tribulation, at the time of the removal of all the wicked ones. So as we can see, the very first verse tells us that this book is directed toward us. It was written for us in our time. So it is amazing, it is huge, it is super important. And that may be one or the main reason why they have taken this book out of scriptures, since even though it is not mentioned by name directly, as it happens with the book of Yashar, there are several quotes which are taken from this book, found in the book of Judas, the letter of Peter, one of the letters of Peter, and even some connect some of the words of Mashiach with this book. So there are several things that are said in this book, only in this book, that are mentioned by Judas, the book right before the book of Revelation, and also by Peter. So the fact that they mentioned those things, those two apostles, Peter and Yehuda, the fact that they mentioned those things means that they had this book and they would read it and they would think it was inspired. So therefore it is inspired, because if it were not, then the Messiah would have told them, and they would not have mentioned anything or quoted anything from the book. And even more than that, several of the things that we will see throughout this book are connected with the book of Revelation. For instance, the trumpet, the fifth trumpet, is very key and connects with this revelation of this book. So once again, the blessing of Hanoch, with which he blessed the elect, so the chosen few, 144,000, and the righteous, which would connect with the many. Obviously, we could see this as one group, the elect and righteous. But remember that, as Romans 10:10 reads, with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth one confesses unto salvation. So those who are elect for salvation are those who not only believe in their hearts for righteousness, but also confess with their mouth for salvation. So the elect are the chosen few. That's why Matthew also says that many are called, but few are chosen or elect. Therefore, when it says with which he blessed the elect, those are the chosen from the many to be saved from the tribulation without having to experience death, like Hanoch himself. In fact, as we read in scripture, the part in Genesis when we find Hanoch, just in case any of you who listen now or those who will listen in the future may not be clear regarding who Hanoch was and what happened with him. I'm going to go to Bereshit 5. Here in Genesis, it says it says 5 verse 18. And Yered lived 162 years and brought forth Hanoch. And after he brought forth Hanoch, Yered lived 800 years and brought forth sons and daughters. So all the days of Yered were 962 years, and he died. And Hanoch lived 65 years and brought forth Metushalach. Metushalach is an important person. His name means his death will bring it. And it had to do with the fact that, as we will see in the book of Hanoch, they were told that when Metushalach would die, then his death would bring the flood. So that's why Metushalach means with his death, I will send it, pretty much. So Metu is his death. Shalach comes from, is to send. So Metushalach, with his death, it will be sent. What? The flood. So that's why when Metushalach died, Yahweh gave 7 extra days. 7 extra days for them to mourn him. And as I have explained, those 7 days are connected with several things. For instance, the 7 years of the fat cows right before the 7 years of skinny cows that represent the last week of Daniel, this last 7 years. But when it comes to time, the counting of the calendar, which is very connected with the book of Hanoch, and that is certain chapters that I don't know how much you guys will enjoy them, for there are several chapters about how to follow the calendar. So it talks a lot about the movements of the stars and the sun and the moon, the doors through which they go, etc. And when we go through that, we will reestablish pretty much how the calendar goes, why it is followed the way it is. And there are two things very interesting about Hanoch, who wrote about the calendar. The calendar is one of the three main points given in the book of Hanoch. One of the three main visions of the book of Hanoch has to do with the calendar. So Hanoch is very much connected with the counting of time. And I say that because, once again, I repeat, Metushalach, with his death, I will send it. There were 7 days that were added in a way, because it wasn't going to be that way. It was going to come down right after his death. But Yahweh gave extra time in honor to, to honor pretty much Metushalach, a righteous person, and to give his family time to mourn him. So Yahweh added 7 days, which is interesting because in the calendar, because of the adjustments that the Almighty has done throughout time in order to shorten the time, like he said in the letter of Peter, or through Peter, through that, there are several issues that most people don't notice or take in account when it comes to the calendar. So their calendars go back in time the more years go by, or, well, they have issues with the interpretation of what Hanoch says, not taking in account what happens also in scriptures regarding time, as in when Yahushua ben Nun stopped the sun and the moon, and also when Yahweh made the sun go back 10 degrees in the time of Hezekiah, the king. So the fact that it says that Metushalach, and then that died, and then 7 days, and then the flood, is interesting because the perfect adjustment for the calendar, as we will see eventually, is of 7 days, a week that is added when the calendar is about to pass the equinox. Because as we will see in the book of Hanoch, the equinox is the end point of the calendar. The calendar ends at the equinox. So since the calendar ends there, if the calendar is going back, it cannot go back further than the equinox. So that's why that is the last day of the month. And when it goes back to that day, then we must add a week. So 7 days, just like 7 days were in a way, I repeat, added when Metushalach died. So, and Hanoch lived 65 years and brought forth Metushalach. And after he brought forth Metushalach, Hanoch walked with Elohim, and this is very important. Hanoch walked with Elohim 300 years and brought forth sons and daughters. So all the days of Hanoch were 365 years. 365 years, the time that the sun takes to complete its cycle. So Hanoch represents the sun. He is a representation of the Son of Righteousness. In fact, he could be, in a way, through certain things that we have talked regarding, for instance, reincarnation, stuff like that, as it is taught in Judaism, for instance. Because a lot of people, even in Christianity, believe that Hanoch is one of the two witnesses. And one of the two witnesses is the Son of Righteousness. So one thing is for sure, he represents the witness like Moshe. He would be a representation of Mikael, the Son of Righteousness. But he may actually be the Son of Righteousness manifesting previously. And I say that because also in Judaism, it is believed that when he went up to the heavens, he was turned into a malach, an angel, which would be called Metatron, which according to the book of Zerubbabel is another name for Mikael. And Mikael, as we know in Daniel 12, is the one coming at the end of times as the witness like Moshe. However, the problem is that the main reason, and perhaps even the only one, for which Christianity claims that Hanoch is one of the two witnesses and Eliyahu being the other, is that they are both in scriptures the only people from scriptures, I repeat, who were taken to paradise without dying. They didn't experience death on earth. So to Christians, they must come down to die. So that's why they believe that they will come down in a cloud, kind of like flying, and they will have to die on earth, because Hebrews says that it was appointed for men to die once and then judgment. However, they don't understand that verse in context. They take it out of context and end up thinking that and misinterpreting and wanting Eliyahu and Hanok to die. When in fact, the fact that Eliyahu and Hanok didn't die, they were taken without experiencing death, was a double confirmation, or in fact, a confirmation, because of the two times that it happened, because two witnesses is enough for a confirmation or a truth in judgment. So, two examples, Hanog and Eliyahu, of the fact that the chosen few would be taken alive without experiencing death. Now, if Christianity says that they must come down to die, then they would also, as they believe in the rapture, they would have to go in the rapture and then come back later on to die, if they are expecting that from Hanog and Eliyahu. But the fact that Hanog and Eliyahu did not come down again as they were in those same bodies is because the chosen few will go and not come back, in the sense that will not have to die ever again. I mean, ever, because they haven't, unless reincarnation is included. So most in Christianity believe that Hanok is one of the two witnesses that must come to die. Remember that Eliyahu went away without dying, but then he came down again as Yahuhanan, or John the Baptist. Others call him Yohanan. So he came as John the Baptist. Yahushua told us. However, John the Baptist was born from Zechariah and Elisheba. The fact that he was born from Zechariah and Elisheba is interesting, because you can form from Elisheba and Zechariah the name Eliah. For Eliyahu was born from Zechariah and Elisheba, and that was and is Yohanan the Immerser, or John the Baptist. Yahushua said, if you can believe it, he is. If you can receive it, he is Eliyahu who was to come. So that was another confirmation, and a very important one, because if Eliyahu was taken up to heaven or to paradise, and I say that because Yahushua explained no one has gone up to heaven, meaning the heaven of the Father, but there are several other heavens below that. But Mashiach was talking about the heaven of the Father, because Jews, and I say that term in the sense that those who did not believe in Mashiach, they had the idea that Eliyahu and Hanok had been taken to the highest heaven, just like they thought regarding Moshe, but none of them went to the highest heaven. They went to a different reality taken by certain angels, and they saw angels and all of that, but that was not the highest heaven. In fact, they believe in Judaism of 7 heavens. In the Gnostic books, which come from several apostles, they write of the 8th heaven. Why? Because that is the heaven that Mashiach came to reveal, the heaven of the Father that the Jewish people did not understand or even thought of, because those 7 heavens were the ones ruled by Hillel, or Lucifer. Those 7 heavens within the 2nd heaven, or several levels, 7 levels within the 2nd heaven. They call them 7 heavens. So in the Gnostic books, we read about an 8th, and that is from scriptures, the 3rd. I repeat that again. Paul told us about 3 heavens. That is the simplest way in which we can see the several dimensions that are that of matter, that of antimatter, and that of no matter. That would be the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd. The 1st is that of humans, this reality, I repeat, of matter. The heaven of the angels would be antimatter, which is the one that they are trying to search for with the Hadron Collider, the CERN, dark matter, pretty much as they call it. And then comes the heaven of only spirit. There is no matter at all. So the Jewish people only believed in this too. And they believed that this second one had 7 levels, which they call the 7 heavens. And there's even a story about the king of Tyre or Sur, in which you can read about in Ezekiel 28, which represents Lucifer. But to Jewish people, Lucifer doesn't exist. It's just a Christian invention or misinterpretation of Isaiah. To them, it's only Samael. To them, it's only Belial. So in Ezekiel 28, they only interpret that chapter with the king of Tyre. And they talk about how he had built pretty much a building in the middle of the sea, which had 7 levels, to represent or to claim that he was the, as they say, the God that ruled the 7 heavens. So that's why even the interpretation of the Jewish doctrine confirms how the king of Tyre represents Lucifer, who was placed as ruler of the 7 heavens under the 3rd heaven. I want to make that clear. So Hanoch and Eliyahu did not go to heaven, not to the heaven of the Father. Nobody has seen the Father, as Yahushua said, only he himself who reveals the Father. So going back to Eliyahu, when Eliyahu went up without dying, but then was born as Yohanan, that is to show how Mashiach resurrected. So he was alive when he went up in Acts 1. But now Yahweh must manifest again, and he would do so by being born on earth through a regular couple, because he comes as the Son of Man this time. For the previous time, he came as the seed of the woman, for he came from a virgin. So the seed of the woman promised in Genesis 3:15, and the Son of Man promised all over the place, because that Son of Man title is found in many, many places, mainly in the book of Yahezkel or Ezekiel, and obviously used by Yahushua when talking about the second coming. How the coming of the Son of Man would be like the days of Noah and the days of Lot. The days of Noah are actually the ones that we are seeing here when we talk about Hanoch. We are going to see a lot about the days of Noah, and that's why that book is clearly specifically sent to us in our time. So hopefully that was clear, just like Yahweh gave us 2 confirmations by Hanoch and Eliyahu going up without dying, of the fact that the chosen few would go up without dying. Also, he showed us through the way in which Eliyahu came back to this world, how he would come back to this world, unlike what people think because of movies like those in Hollywood, which make them believe or expect things that are not necessary, just because they would perhaps look really nice, like him coming down on a literal cloud and making everybody disappear, and a bunch of other things that they have in their doctrine, and they have even made movies of, like Left Behind, for instance, which I believe is a really, really, it may be entertaining, but it is really bad when it comes to interpretation of scripture. And I think it has made a lot of damage in the minds of a lot of Christians, for that's what they are expecting. And I would have thought that by now they would have figured out that it is not as scriptural or biblical as they thought. However, I just read like a week ago, something like that, some news about how they were interviewing the guy who wrote those books, because they thought they were so on point. And I say that because of the way they interpret mainly the 2 witnesses, and the fact that they don't make the separation between the beast and the false Messiah, which we see in scriptures. And also, obviously, the fact of the time when the rapture happens, which is at the very beginning of everything, because that's why it is called left behind, those who were left behind. They even show the 2 witnesses throwing fire out of their mouths, literal fire. That shows that they don't understand scriptures. And it's very sad, because that's what a lot of people are waiting for, thinking that is going to happen. They show the two witnesses in Jerusalem only. The 3.5 years in Jerusalem, something that scriptures doesn't say, but 99% of Christians and even Messianic people believe in. But it is not written in scriptures. And we know Moshe and Aaron were outside of Israel. They were bringing people to Israel. That was the point, as Yahweh said regarding the second Exodus. Just like Zerubbabel, he was in Babel during the exile to bring the people. When the Persian Empire conquered Babel, Zerubbabel was bringing the people to Israel back. So there are several, like a lot of revelations in scriptures that show us how the two witnesses would manifest, but because of the, well, movies like that and interpretations of some, it is believed by most Christians that they would only appear in Jerusalem all the time, that they would have like long beards and clothing like that of 2,000 years ago, throwing fire out of their mouths. Armies would go and shoot at them and nothing would happen to them. Things like Avengers type of thing. And mixed with the movies that they show in what they call Easter. So it is a very bad interpretation, sadly, and a lot of people see it as completely correct, but it's not how it's going to happen. I repeat, Eliyahu went up, then he was born. Yahushua said it. So why are they expecting Eliyahu to come from the heavens or the Messiah to go by and take everybody up when that hasn't happened? And we don't see that example in scriptures. And I repeat, the only example is that of Eliyahu and Hanoch, about the few who will be taken up during the harvest. But that harvest will not be like the rapture that they speak about. There are two things, two completely different things. So I just want to make that clear. So 23. So all the days of Hanoch were 365 years. So he lived 65 years. Just want to see what is the 65th day on the calendar. And I'm doing this because it said that he lived 65 years, then he had his son, and then he lived an extra 300, and then he was taken up. So the 365 days are connected with the cycle of the sun, not the calendar, because the calendar is 364. The sun is 365. Okay, it will be the 5th of the third month. The 5th of the third month. Interestingly enough, one day after, or even the same as they sometimes write this eclipses, depending on where you are on Earth. But interestingly enough, there was an eclipse right at that time this year. But okay, there's no mention of anything in scriptures regarding that day. So that's what I wanted to check. So the 65 in Hebrew would be represented by a samech. The samech is 60, which is normally written as a circle. And this is the 5, the hay. So this would be 65. And this is ruach, and this is a circle. So we will be like the ruach that makes the sun do a circle. The power of the Almighty, which makes the sun, which is a circle or seen like a circle, make a circle over the circle of the earth, as we see in Isaiah. So even the numbers used, 65, could be connected with the circle of the earth, above which the sun, which it seemed like a circle, circles around the earth by the power of the Ruach to reveal what's on the earth. Because if the sun is not circling the earth, then there will be darkness and nobody would be able to see, which is also represented by the hay. For the hay is revelation, is a window. A window works so that you can see what's outside while you are inside. So the sun circles the circle of the earth in order to give us light so that we can see and receive the revelation of that which is before us. Hope that's clear. And then we add the 300. The 300, as you guys know, is the numerical value of the letter Shin. And the letter Shin represents fire, like the fire of the sun, and like the consuming fire. So Hanoch represents the son of righteousness, and therefore the consuming fire, which is the Shin. So his life was separated over here with 65 and then 300, like the 300 army that was following Gidon, fighting against the Midianites. So 300, the army that represents the chosen few that follow the consuming fire that will go around the earth to give the doctrine of the Most High to the chosen few who will receive the Ruach. So 365, the consuming fire that will go around the earth giving Ruach. So 300, there are several connections there also. You see how it has three spikes pretty much. There are three letters that form this one letter. The Nun, the Vav, and the Zayin. And each of those represent, for instance, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but also represent the, Eliyahu, Hamashiach, and the witness like Moshe. Eliyahu came to separate the time of the flesh from the time of the spirit, like the Zayin is a sword that separates. The Vav is a man and a nail, just like Mashiach came as a man to be nailed to the tree. And then the Nun, just like the last, is the son of Nun, is descendant from Nun, and is fallen before because of the apostasy in which he is born. And I say that because the Nun is a letter that represents to fall. That's why Nafal, to fall. So that letter represents the one that comes at the very end as the consuming fire to complete what the other two did 2,000 years ago. And that one comes as the last, which is the letter that comes after. And here we have the name of the son of Adam, Set, or Shet, from whom came Hanoch. So all the days of Hanoch were 365 years. So he represents the son of righteousness. That is very important from Malachi 4:2. That's why he was given the calendar. Here we are also being told that the sun takes 365 years. 365 days to go around the earth. Makes two different circles, as we will see later on. 6 months on one side, 6 months on the other side of the earth. But the middle of the earth is where most of the land is, and therefore there's always light in most of the land that exists on this earth. But as we know, when the sun goes to one part of the earth, the other part remains in darkness for a while. That is north and south. For the sun goes always from east to west. And I'm getting ahead of myself when it comes to what we will find in this book of Hanoch. I just wanted to show this because I really think it's very important how Hanoch represents the sun and how the Almighty was telling us in the 5th chapter of the first book of scriptures, the cycle of the sun, which is very important. How it lasts 365 is very important because the calendar is 364. So the sun goes for one extra day, which makes it so that we need to adjust the calendar. So, and Hanoch walked with Elohim. Then he was no more, for Elohim took him. By most interpret this as what it is, that Yahweh took Hanoch with him to show, like I said, what the chosen few will be will go through when they are taken by the Almighty. Also is showing how, since Hanoch was such a righteous person, then Yahweh did not allow him to experience death. That means also that he would have reached the level of Yahida, which is when a person through his soul becomes one with he who is one, Yahweh. So when you get to the fifth level, this is the fifth chapter, when you get to the fifth level of the soul, the first is Nefesh, the second is Neshama, the third is, I would say that in the wrong order. First is Nefesh, the second is Ruach, the third is Neshama, the fourth is Chaya, and the fifth is Yehida. So Hanoch received that, and that's why he didn't experience death, at least in that life, at that time. So Hanoch walked with Elohim. Then he was no more, so he disappeared. They couldn't find him anymore. Yahweh took him. It says, for Elohim took him. And just in case, just so you guys know, the Samaritans, those of the Shomronim, they believe that this verse refers to Hanoch dying. So they actually believe that he died. But that is only their belief. Most people who believe in scriptures and believe in this book and everything, interpret this as Hanoch being taken without experiencing death. And then it continues with Metushelach and Lemech and Noach, and then the flood came. So going back to Hanoch, kind of thinking I'm missing one thing that I wanted to say. Hopefully I'll remember it in a few. So going back to Hanoch. All right. It says, the blessing of Hanoch with which he blessed the elect and the righteous, the few and the many, right? Because the elect are those who are chosen from the many. Many are called, few are chosen. The many who are called are those who believe in their hearts that the Messiah came and died for their sins. That's why they have righteousness in their hearts, because of their belief in the testimony of Mashiach. However, they have not confessed the name, for they were taught a false name, which doesn't save. So they don't have the confession with their mouths in order to be elect, chosen. So with which he blessed the elect and the righteous, few and many, who would be present on the day of tribulation at the time of the removal of all the wicked ones. Look how it says at the time of the removal of all the wicked ones. Yet in Christianity, they expect the removal of the Christian church. Is the opposite. It would be like they are the wicked then. And also that shows, well, one of the reasons why it is so important to read this book, and also one of the reasons why they took it away from the scriptures, because if they were to read it, they would realize that it kind of contradicts their belief. Also, they believe that they will be taken, well, not all Christians, but most, they will be taken before the tribulation. So they are taken and then the tribulation begins. But it says, the righteous who would be present on the day of tribulation at the time of the removal of the wicked ones. So the few and the many will be present at the tribulation. And another thing is that, as you guys know, the great tribulation will begin at the very end of the first 3.5 years. And in fact, that is when the many will die, during the great tribulation. Verse 2. And Hanoch, the blessed and righteous man of Yahweh, took up his parable while his eyes were open, and he saw and said, this is a Kodesh vision, or Kadosh. This is a Kadosh vision, I believe should be, which is a set apart vision, which they erroneously normally translate as holy. But holy is connected to Helios, which is the sun, in the bad sense of what the sun represents to a lot of nations whom worship it as a god. So a lot of people worship the sun, and when they do that, they're actually worshiping Lucifer, because Lucifer has hid himself behind the image of the sun. And we could also say that that is the luminary that was given to him during this reality. And that's why it falls every afternoon, because Lucifer at the very end will fall, as we see in Revelation 12, even though a lot of people believe that he has fallen already. He fell from the favor of Yahweh, but not literally to the earth, as we see in Revelation 12. So, and Hanoch, the blessed and righteous man of Yahweh, took up his parable while his eyes were open, and he saw and said, this is a Kadosh vision from the heavens, which the Malachim showed me. And I heard from them everything, and I understood. I look not for this generation, but for the distant one that is coming. I speak about the elect ones and concerning them. It is similar to what we read in Numbers, when Bilam, the false prophet, well, he who represents the false prophet, however, Yahweh used them there to give a true prophecy, as you can read in Numbers. He's sent by Balak to curse Israel. Yahweh doesn't allow Bilam to curse Israel. Instead, he ends up blessing them with a prophecy. And the prophecy was of he who would come at the very end to conquer, conquering and to conquer, as we see in Revelation 6. He who would overcome, as we see in Revelation 2 and 3. We see in Numbers 24 when Bilam says, I see him, but not now. So he's talking about the end times, just like it says here, I look not for this generation, but for the distant one that is coming. And just to show that prophecy real quick, if we go to Numbers 24, it says, verse 17, I see him, but not now. In fact, I'm going to go from verse 16 because it is even more similar. The saying of him who hears the words of El and knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes open wide, with eyes open wide. And we just read here on Hanoch that it said, which the Malachim showed me, and I heard from them everything. Let me see. Oh no, the very beginning. Took up his parable while his eyes were open, and he saw. While his eyes were open, and he saw. But we see here that it says regarding Bilam, who falls down with eyes open wide. He fell down pretty much because of the vision, but also shows how he's a fallen person. But then we go to 17, and it says, I see him, but not now. So when it comes to time, in the end, since Bilam was pretty much in the beginning of time, I observe him, but not near. Once again, far in time. And even like we could say, because here is talking about time and space. I see him, but not now, time. I observe him, but not near, space. So he's pretty much saying that he would appear in the end times on the other side of the world, unlike what most people believe. Mashiach already appeared in Israel. That's why the last must appear on the other side, because Yahweh said that he would be known from where the sun comes up to where it hides. So that's why I see him, but not now, later in time. I observe him, but not near, far away then. And it says, a star shall come out of Jacob, a star. Remember when Joseph had a dream that he was a star, and the sun and the moon and the stars all bow down to him. The last comes as a star from Joseph to fulfill that prophecy. Obviously, that was fulfilled with him also, but it had another fulfillment. It would have another fulfillment in the end times. A star is a representation of a malach, an angel. So it's saying that an angel, a malach, would come to this earth through Jacob, therefore being a son of Jacob through one of his tribes. And because of the dream of Joseph and other things, we realize it is referring to the descendant of Joseph through Nun, who would come as a star. In fact, it is interesting that, like I just said, when people worship the sun, they're worshiping Lucifer. So it is interesting that the sun bowed down to a star. That was Yaakov bowing down to Joseph in his time. But in the spiritual sense, in the end times, would be the fallen angels and even the correct angels, the good angels, bowing down to the last. In the heavens, it is said that there are two suns, a physical and a spiritual. The physical is the yellow sun of every day that represents Lucifer, like I just said. And the spiritual is a star called Sirius. That's what they claim it is, the spiritual sun. So, in fact, well, in Masonry, it is said, and other teachings, but mainly in that Masonry, it is said that it is the entrance to the temple in heaven. In other beliefs, Sirius is the entrance to the heavens. So it is like a portal, a door, a stargate. So I say all of that because Sirius in Hebrew is called Abrach. Abrach. In fact, so I'm going to the translator for a moment just to show you in a visual way what I'm saying. So here we go. Hebrew to English. If we write, like, look at this, this is father, right? If I write here a mem, that we have Abraham before he became Abraham, right? So we have there 3 letters of Abraham. The first 2 letters means father. If I put a kaf here, sadly, it's translating it like that, but it shouldn't. That is pretty much the translation they give to it nowadays in their modern Hebrew, which is not the Hebrew of the Torah. If I write a kuf, see how it says Sirius? So that is the star that I'm talking about. So this letter, the last letter, the kuf, it has a similar sound than the kaf. The kuf and the kaf is like a K. So in Hebrew, they are interchangeable. That is one of the methods that is used in Hebrew to find connections between words, to find deeper revelations in scriptures through changing certain letters. And that is not the only way in which letters can be switched. They can be switched through their sound. There's another method in which they're switched through well, what they represent or how they are pronounced with the mouth, because some are pronounced with the throat, others with the lips, others with the tongue. So depending on that, the letters that are pronounced with the tongue can be interchangeable. The letters that are pronounced with the throat are interchangeable, etc. So there are plenty of ways in which we can switch the Hebrew words and letters in order to receive more. So this is, even though it might sound to some weird, this is kind of the simplest one. And I find it very interesting because here, this name is the name with which they called Yosef when he came out after, when Yosef was taken out of prison to become pretty much the king of the world after Pharaoh. Yet, as we know, because of the book of Yashar and other things, Yosef was the one who actually had the right to rule, yet he allowed Pharaoh to continue with the illusion that he was the ruler. And I say that because Yahweh gave the 71 languages to Yosef. The Pharaoh only had 70 languages. That meant, according to the Egyptian law, that he wasn't allowed to rule. But the Pharaoh made Yosef pretty much swear, make a covenant, so that he wouldn't reveal that fact. So if we go to Genesis chapter 41, verse 43, and he had him ride in the second chariot. I'm going to read a little bit more. 42, and Pharaoh took his seal ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. That is very important because we see in the book of Haggai, chapter 2, how Yahweh tells Zerubbabel, he who was born in Babel, in confusion, who represents the second coming, the last witness like Moshe, son of Nun, etc. Yahweh tells him that he will give him or make him the ring that Yahweh would wear to rule over this earth, meaning the last will be the ruler of this earth, representing Yahweh, who will remain as the Most High. So the seal ring, Pharaoh gave it to Joseph. That represents how Yahweh will give the authority to the last, the descendant of Joseph. And he dressed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck, gave him the kingdom represented by the gold chain, and the garments gave him a new body, fine linen like the clothing of the chosen few. So that is when the last becomes one with the first. First and last will become one, just like Yahweh promised in Ezekiel 37 and in Zechariah 14:9. And then it says, and he had him ride in the second chariot, which he had. And they cried out before him, bow the knee, bow the knee. And he set him over all the land of Mizraim. So they said, bow the knee. This word, bow the knee. Let me put the parallel Hebrew version. Hopefully you can see the Hebrew right next to it. And I said verse 43, bow the knee. Verse 43, it's right here. So it says, and they would call before his face, Abrech. So you see here, Aleph, Bet, Resh, Kaf. Aleph, Bet, Resh, Kaf. You see how it's the same word as here, Aleph, Bet, Resh, Kaf. Abrech, which can be interpreted in Hebrew as bow the knee, because Birchaim are knees, and Barach is to bless, or he blessed. So this three right here would be to bless. If you add a aleph, it would be he will bless. In this case, it could be interpreted as he will be blessed. So the fact that they were bowing the knee, but they were saying Abrech, could be taken as the Hebrew, he will be blessed, or father of blessing. I hope that is being understood, because Av is father also. So if we connect Av with the Barach of blessing, then Abrach or Abrech would be he will bless, but I repeat, in this sense, it will be taken as he will be blessed, or bless him. But we know that he was in Egypt. They didn't speak Hebrew. They spoke the language of Mizraim, of Egypt. So it's interesting that it's written this way, and it can be interpreted in two ways: as father of blessing, bowed the knee, he will be blessed, or he will bless Egypt with his food, with his knowledge, with his wisdom, as we see in the context. But the fact that we can switch this kaf for a kuf makes the possibility that they were in Egypt calling him Abrach, and in Hebrew could be interpreted as Abrech. Abrach is the star Sirius, and is the star that was taken in Egypt as the main one through which they would follow their calendar. Because when the star Sirius or Abrach would appear, the Nile will rise and bring fruit to the land of Egypt. So they would begin the calendar with the star Sirius. And when Joseph came to Egypt, the Nile raised up. So it is very possible that they made the connection, and they saw Joseph as the representation or the manifestation of the star Sirius, Abrach, and they would have been calling him with that name. And I said all of that because we see here, I see him, but not now. I observe him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob. That was in a way fulfilled with Joseph when they call him Abrach, Sirius. But this is a prophecy that came even after Joseph ruling over Egypt. So he's talking about the last, Michael coming through Jacob, through Joseph, through Nun to this earth to rule at the end times on the other side of the earth. And a scepter shall rise out of Israel, so he will become a king. Yahushua came as the Kohen Gadol. And shall smite the corners of Moab and shall destroy all the sons of Sheth. So I'm going to go back to Hanoch because I spoke a lot regarding this point, but that is all to show how the star, well, the things with in the firmament are connected to both the last and Hanoch, and also in this case to Joseph. And Hanoch, the blessed and righteous man of Yahweh, took up his parable while his eyes were open, and he saw, just like Bilam, and said, this is a Kadosh vision from the heavens, which the Malachim showed me. And I heard from them everything, and I understood. I look not for this generation, but for the distant one that is coming. Just like Bilam said, I see him, but not now. I observe him, but not near. I look not for this generation, but for the distant one that is coming. I speak about the elect ones and concerning them, the elect ones. So this is talking to our congregation. Verse 3, and I took up with a parable, saying, mighty one of the universe. And I say that because of the context seems to point to here having the word Elohim and not Yahweh. I hope that's understood, because Yahweh of the universe is weird since Yahweh is a name. Elohim is a title. So mighty one of the universe would be more appropriate, I believe, in this case, of course. And that sometimes happens when the names are added. Sometimes they add Yahweh where it shouldn't, well, where Elohim is, but not completely sure that is the case this time, but just mentioning that. I took up with a parable, saying, Elohim of the universe, the Kadosh, great one, will come forth from his dwelling. So look how it says a parable, but he's being very clear about it, saying about how the mighty one of the creation of the universe, and I even dare to use that word as some others don't like it, because of the fact that universe pretty much means one verse. And we know that the whole creation was made in one verse. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. One verse, the first of scripture. So universe fits the creation. So the mighty one of the universe, the Kadosh, great one, will come forth from his dwelling. So it all starts saying that the Almighty would come to this earth, would come from the heavens to the earth. And from there, he will march upon Mount Sinai and appear in his camp, emerging from heaven with a mighty power. And everyone shall be afraid, and watchers shall quiver. Watchers referring to certain type of angels that were supposed to watch humanity and take care of it, yet they actually came down and made humanity worse than it already was because of sin. So here is talking about pretty much the very end, when first and last are already one, and he would appear making everybody bow down pretty much. So, and from there he will march, go back to the third, and I took a parable, I will of the universe. Yeah, 4. And from there he will march upon Mount Sinai or Sinai and appear in his camp, his chosen few, emerging from heaven with a mighty power, and everyone shall be afraid, and watchers shall quiver. And great fear and trembling shall seize them unto the ends of the earth. So this will happen across the entire earth, not like 2,000 years ago, And that just to confirm that we are pretty much in a perfect time for this to happen, when the whole world is connected. Mountains and high places will fall down and be frightened, and high hills shall be made low. That is in, well, other than the earthquakes and everything that will make literal things shake and come down, in the spiritual sense, is talking about how the kingdoms will be brought low. Those who have power nowadays will go down. Those who are without power will have power now. So in great fear and trembling shall seize them unto the ends of the earth. Mountains and high places will fall down and be frightened, and high hills shall be made low, and they shall melt like a honeycomb before the flame, because he's now coming as the consuming fire. Honeycomb before the flame. In scriptures, we see how the house of Jacob would be a fire and Yosef a flame. So Yosef is the flame mentioned in scriptures, and here we see a connection because the lash comes from Yosef as a flame to burn the wicked. Verse 7, and the earth shall be rent asunder, and all that is upon the earth shall perish. And there shall be a judgment upon all, including the righteous. Look how it is confirming, because it didn't say the elect, it said the righteous. Previously it said the elect and the righteous, few and many. So now we're saying including the righteous, meaning the many, those who will have to die during the Great Tribulation, 30 days that are mentioned in Hosea 5:7. Now, obviously, even the elect are judged in the sense of to see if they are elect or not. So they are judged to see if their works, their deeds are good, and if so, they are elected, they are chosen, and they won't go through the Great Tribulation. But the many who receive righteousness, they will have to die in order to be resurrected. So, and the earth shall be rent asunder, and all that is upon the earth shall perish, and there shall be judgment upon all, including the righteous. And to all the righteous, he will grant shalom. So like I was saying, he will resurrect the many. And when they are resurrected, they will receive eternal shalom, eternal peace. And look at what it says later. And to all the righteous, he will grant shalom. He will preserve the elect. So the elect won't have to experience death. They will be preserved. And loving kindness shall be upon them. Loving kindness, which is pretty much chesed in Hebrew, which is also translated as favor. The favor that came from Yahweh through Yahushua. So they shall all belong to Yahweh, and they shall prosper and be blessed. They shall all belong to Yahweh, and they shall prosper and be blessed. And the light of Yahweh shall shine upon them. Shall shine unto them. The light of Yahweh, which, as we know, is Yahushua. He said, I am the light. This is very important also because throughout this book, remember that Yahweh is talking to those at the end of time. So Yahushua is pretty much hidden throughout the book. It's there, but it's hidden. The book is not very clear about the coming of Yahushua because this was for our time, 2,000 years later. So that's why it doesn't focus on the coming of Mashiach. But since we know Mashiach now, 2,000 years after he came, pretty much, then we know that he is the light. So when he says here, and the light of Yahweh shall shine unto them, we know that that means Yahweh shining through Mashiach, Yahushua, as we see in Revelation, that we won't have a need for the sun, for the Lamb will be the lamp. Like I said, you only get the B of lamp, and you turn it down and it becomes a P, so it becomes a lamp. So they shall all belong to Yahweh, and they shall prosper and blessed and be blessed. And the light of Yahweh shall shine unto them. Behold, he will arrive with 10 million of the Kodesh ones in order to execute judgment upon all. He will destroy the wicked ones. Here, I believe it didn't say million. I think it said thousands of thousands, which he interpreted as millions. And that's fine because kind of that's how you get by multiplying them. But so some interpret the words thousands of thousands as him not being able to count them. So just saying the number, the greatest number that he knew at the moment, thousands of thousands. Million is something that came afterwards, that word, to pretty much explain the bunch of money that they have. So billion, million, billion, trillion, all of that. So I say that because we know that the last comes to pick up the chosen few, who happen to be 144,000. So there are several thousands of people, and they will become the army, the heavenly army. The chosen few become the heavenly army in Revelation 19, where they come with Mashiach to fight in the war of Armageddon. So I say that because this verse could be interpreted as him coming with 144,000, other than later on coming with Malachim or anything like that, like is most of the time interpreted. So, behold, he will arrive with 10 million of the Kadosh ones, or 10 thousands of the Kadosh ones, in order to execute judgment upon all. He will destroy the wicked ones and censor all flesh on account of everything that they have done. So he will not only destroy, but also punish. He will destroy the wicked ones and censor all flesh on account of everything that they have done, that which the sinners and the wicked ones committed against him. They think that when they reject Yahweh and do the things that they do, they think they're very smart. They think they're very, I don't know. They think that they won't have to pay or answer the Almighty Creator who gave them the power to do those things through which they hurt others. That's why they have to pay. Like, not only a murderer must pay for his murder, but for instance, an atheist who perhaps convinced another person of there not being a creator, and therefore now he has to answer for that soul that will be lost because of him if he also rejects the Almighty, for instance. So that which the sinners and the wicked ones committed against him. There are many things that that humans commit against Yahweh, no matter if they believe in Yahweh or not. What they do, pretty much, the less they believe in Yahweh, the more things they do against him. Unless they are perfectly possessed, as Malachi Martins would use that term, unless they are so possessed that they do things against Yahweh on purpose, knowing that he is the most high creator, just like, for instance, Lucifer knows, yet he rebels against the creator. So that's how that chapter ends. I know it's kind of early, so I don't know if you guys want to read the second, third, fourth, since they're really small. The following ones, I guess we could read until perhaps the fifth, like, because this one then has a title and it gets good, of course, but perhaps we can leave that for, well, let's see how much time it takes us to read till the fifth chapter. And since these are so small, perhaps like you can edit well, I don't know how to do it. You choose, but perhaps you can leave the whole study and just write chapter 1 through 5 or something like that, if you want. So, Hanoch chapter 2. Examine all the activities which take place in the sky and how they do not alter their ways. Examine all the activities which take place in the sky and how they do not alter their ways. This is something that I mentioned in the studies regarding the calendar, and well, one person, well, I'm pretty sure other people also, but one that I know misunderstood the point, and that made that person get confused regarding the calendar and even go to follow a different calendar. For instance, the point here is that if you look at the heavens, and this is amazing, even when we take in account the fact that we are pretty much like 5,700 years after Hanoch wrote this. So Hanoch wrote the book, and he says, look how nothing changes. There is something important also. The historian Josephus, he wrote, the Jewish historian who worked with the Romans and translated pretty much everything to Latin for the Romans to, or even Greek, to understand pretty much the belief of the Yahudim of that moment, of that time. And he was a historian who wrote a bunch of things regarding that time and even previous times. And he wrote how Yahweh allowed men to live for more than 600 years in the beginning of history so that they would be able to write down all the information regarding the luminaries, regarding the stars, the sun and the moon for the great year, meaning the complete cycle of all the sun, stars, moon, sun, moon, and stars. The complete cycle lasts 600 years. So Josephus said that Yahweh allowed men to live over 600 years so that men could be able to see all those movements, pretty much see the whole great year in order to understand how the sun and moon work. And that would be one of the ways in which they were able back in the day to see the eclipses coming. They would be able to know when an eclipse would happen. So since they lived for so many years, they were able to look at the sky and study the heavens for a long, long time. Not like nowadays. Yet nowadays we have programs in computers in which we can see thousands of years with the click of a button in a few minutes. So it's amazing how the Almighty does things. So I say that because if you look at the heavens, for instance, well, whatever constellation you look at, it is exactly the same constellation, the same shape, the same stars on the same spots on the firmament as when Hanoch saw it. So Hanoch saw the stars, and for 365 years, he saw the stars. Well, we could take a few years for when he was growing, but for 350 years, he saw the stars and he realized, look, they don't change. They're always the same constellations. And if we are 5,000 plus years later and we still see the same constellations, it is amazing that that should prove to everybody who believes in the Big Bang and other things that space, as they tell us, is not like they say. Because if it were like they say and the Big Bang happened and everything is going their own direction to like in an infinite space, which if I'm not mistaken, they are now saying that it's not infinite, but they do believe that it is expanding. So they see it as expanding from the Big Bang. And from the Big Bang, that explosion, everything started to be created and everything started to rotate, planets and all of that as they believe it. And the stars are flying throughout space in their own directions. So how is it possible if they are going all in their respective directions and we are in a very little spot of space, as they say, very little spot, and all the stars and everywhere are flying? How is it that the stars are still in the same spot. We should have different constellations now than 1,000 years ago and different than 1,000 years prior. So if the stars are there still on the same spot, is because they don't move as they tell us. They move with the firmament. They are stuck in the firmament. That's why they are exactly the same now than when Hanoch was watching. The difference that this other person didn't understand regarding this interpretation is that even though they are the same stars, since the moon has a cycle of 355 days, the sun 365 days, the stars have their own cycle. So that's why they, throughout the 600 years of the great year, or we could even say a shorter cycle, which is the cycle of the moon, 19 years for the moon to start appearing on the same days as it did the previous 19 years. So because of those different cycles of each of the luminaries, sun, moon, and stars, makes it so that the stars are now appearing later than they used to by the beginning of the year. So they are the same stars, same constellations, same spots, but they are pretty much 20 days later, appearing 20 days later than when they were appearing 2,000 years ago. Pretty much they stand behind 10 days every 1,000 years. So that's why 2,000 years ago, the constellation that was in the sky right when Mashiach was being killed was the lamb, the ram, Aries, and the star was on its foot. Like I have explained, well, it went from one foot to the other in 3 days, which represents how the serpent would bite the heel, but then how he would crush the serpent's head, as prophesied by Yahweh in Genesis 3, when talking about the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. So that same day, now, when we take the Enoch's calendar, of course, and Enoch himself will say it in chapter 80, the stars at the end would fall behind. And that's why by our time, in our time, when we are in Pesach, the star is just entering the ram or the lamb, Aries. But when the year starts, the sun is still on the constellation of Pisces, which back in the day used to be at the very end of the year. And all of that has to do also with the fact that Yahweh said that he would shorten the times in the end times. So that's why that would happen in the heavens, other than the fact that many of the Malachim, who are represented by the stars, would rebel against the Most High, and that's why they would not appear on their time, as we will see in Hanoch 86. But examine, I repeat, verse 1 of chapter 2, examine all the activities which take place in the sky and how they do not alter their ways. Pretty much in 600 years, they repeat their ways all over again. And examine the luminaries of heaven, how each one of them rises and sets, which is pretty much an illusion that happens because of how the eyesight works. When something is getting closer, well, just like it gets bigger, in this case, I was playing it with something going away. When something is going away, it gets smaller and smaller. And if it's up, it looks like it goes down to the center of the view. If it's down, it looks like it goes up to the center of the view. And if it's on this side, it seems like it goes to the middle once again. And if it's on the left, it seems like it's going straight to the middle. Just like if you were in perhaps a hotel where there are a bunch of rooms and you are able to see the whole, you would see how if you were to go for 100 miles, you would see how it would begin to become smaller and smaller and smaller until you'd see only a point. So since the sun is up and it goes over our heads, and we see it go away and away and away, starts going down, appears to go down until it disappears from our sight, for we cannot see all things. We just have a certain distance that we can see, and after that is over. A lot of people claim that the earth is round because they are seeing for instance, a boat on the sea, and after a while it seems to disappear behind the water. It seems, and they say, you see, that's round, it's going down on the ball, the sphere. But if once the boat disappears, you get a telescope, you will be able to see it right away. Therefore, it means that it didn't go over the curve. It just went away from your sight, your possibility of seeing it. It went away so far that you cannot see it anymore with your eyes. But if you get help, like a telescope, you'll be able to see it. So it is still there. You just cannot see it. That's all. There's no curve, because if there was a curve, then if you can see it with a telescope, that would mean the light goes like that, which doesn't happen, as we know. So, and examine the luminaries of heaven, how each one of them rises and sets. Rises and sets. And Yahweh did it that way, of course, because it is perfect for us to count the time by telling us when something rises or sets. Each one is systematic according to its respective season. Each one is systematic according to its respective seasons. Look how it is mentioned in seasons first, because that is after the sun as the great sign, as Jubilees call it. The season is what's next. Seasons are what separates the four times of the year. And I wanted to mention what we read on Shabbat, which was regarding Numbers, well, the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, how the Almighty placed each of the tribes around the Mishkan, representing each of the months. For there are 12 tribes, 12 months. The Mishkan as the sun, and the 12 tribes around the Mishkan, 3 on each side, divided like the 4 corners of the earth, 3 on the east, 3 on the west, 3 on the south, 3 on the north. And each of those 4 separations represent the seasons, which have 3 months each. So through the seasons, we are able to also follow the calendar. That's why the equinox is so important, because the equinox announces the beginning of the spring. Spring being the first season of the year, as Yahweh told Moshe in Exodus, when he told him this will be the first month of the year. What month? Aviv. That's what Yahweh called it. What does Aviv mean? Spring. So it is the beginning of the spring when the month of Aviv comes, which is the first month of the year. There are other interpretations that they give to the name Aviv, just in case. It is the time of harvest of the wheat and barley. Barley first, then wheat. So it refers to the green ears of barley, Aviv, when they are still green, for they are just coming up at the beginning of the spring. So each one is systematic according to his respective season, and they do not divert from their appointed order. They do not divert from their appointed order. This part is what confuses a lot of people. Like I said, they have a cycle of 600 years. That is the biggest cycle, but there are other cycles within those 600 years. Like I mentioned, the one of 19 years, that of the moon. So in 19 years, perhaps a person looking at the moon and the sun would think that the moon is diverting from its appointed order, but it is not that. It just hasn't finished its cycle, its order, just like with the stars and everything else. So we could say simply that the stars appearing later in the calendar has to do with their order. That was the order that Yahweh gave them. That's how it was supposed to be for several reasons, some of which we have spoken about here. Other way of seeing it is that Enoch is telling us what would be during his time and a while later. But then in Enoch 80, verse 6, he himself tells us that at the end of time, everything would start pretty much getting not on their time, not on their order, because of the rebellion of the Malachim, who are represented by the stars. So if the stars rebel, then the Malachim rebel, then the stars would start acting up and not appearing at the time that they were supposed to, as we will see later. I just want to explain that just in case. So, and they do not divert from their appointed order. And look at the earth and turn in your mind concerning the action which is taking place in her from the beginning to the end. Look at the earth and turn in your mind concerning the action which is taking place in her from the beginning of the end, from the beginning to the end. How all the work of Yahweh as being manifested does not change. Does not change. The sun came up this morning and it will come up next morning, which is amazing, because Yahweh told us that he would, not because I am prophesying anything. He said that the sun would do it, so it will. And that is something that it has been happening for thousands of years, and people take it for granted. They don't realize how huge that is. And look at the earth and turn in your mind concerning the action which is taking place in her from the beginning to the end, how all the work of Yahweh as being manifested does not change. Water goes down, fire goes up. That doesn't change. But they tell us the water goes up if the world is a sphere, which makes no sense. But through the theory of relativity, all of a sudden does make sense. Because what doesn't make sense to you makes sense to me, because to them it is just relative of who's the mind thinking about it. So, and look at the earth and turn in your mind concerning the action which is taking place in her from the beginning to the end, how all the work of Yahweh as being manifested does not change. And behold, the summer and the winter. So we see how he's talking about the seasons of time during the calendar and how they are so important. And it mentions the two main seasons. Remember that when we are at this, like the more you are at the center of the circle of the earth, the less you will experience of the four seasons. It will appear like it is only summer and winter. The farther away you are from the equator, pretty much, the equator is different than they tell us. It's a circle on a circle in the middle of a bigger circle, while they see it as a circle in the middle of a sphere. But there is an equator. So the closer you are to the equator, the less you will see or feel spring and fall. So that's why summer and winter are the main seasons close to the equator, because of how the sun works. And behold, the summer and the winter, how the whole earth is filled with water and clouds and dew. So it's even amazing that it mentions only summer and winter regarding how the whole earth is affected, because spring and fall are not noticeable in certain parts of the earth. Obviously, they happen because things have to spring and then leaves have to fall. But it doesn't happen as clear as it happens in certain countries. And I say that because my whole life I saw it until I was able to travel a little bit and see certain differences regarding weather and regarding seasons. Behold, the summer and the winter, how the whole earth is filled with water and clouds and dew. And he causes rain to rest upon her. So that is what he's talking about, how nothing changes. Everything keeps happening. Yet the book of Hanoch also tells us that in the end times, everything will start getting out of place. because of the sin of men, not because the earth being evil, not because Yahweh wanted to change it to make us crazy, but because of the sin of men, earth would start acting up. And he causes rain to rest upon her. Hanoch chapter 3. Examine and observe everything and the trees, how all their leaves appear as if they winter, as if they wither and had fallen. How all their leaves appear as if they wither and had fallen, except 14 trees whose leaves do not fall, but the old foliage remains for about 2 to 3 years until the new leaves come. So look how much detail Yahweh gave Hanoch and how much attention he paid to nature in order to realize these things. There are certain trees whose leaves do not fall like the rest. It says, except 14 trees. It is interesting because David, it is written with a dalet, vav, and a dalet. That is the numerical value of 14, like these 14 trees. So David has the numerical value of 14. And one of the prayers that I believe is, of all the prayers, the hundreds of prayers that David wrote, one that stands out a lot is when he prayed about the righteous and how the righteous is like a tree planted next to the river so that its leaf doesn't fall. So David being like a tree whose leaf doesn't fall, and David's numerical value is 14. So look how it says, except 14 trees whose leaf do not fall, but the old foliage remains for about 2 to 3 years until the new leaves come. So the leaves remain until the new one is coming, then they fall. So the tree does not, will not appear without leaves at all. And leaves represent the deeds of men. In this case, David being righteous, doing righteous deeds. So examine and observe everything in the trees, how all their leaves appear as if they wither and had fallen. So now is including the season, autumn or fall. Except 14 trees, making reference to the numerical value of David, who prayed about the trees whose leaves do not fall. Except 14 trees whose leaves do not fall, but the old foliage remains for about 2 to 3 years until the new leaves come. Enoch chapter 4. And again, examine the days of the summer, how the heat of the sun is upon the earth and dominates her. Again, examine the days of the summer, how the heat of the sun is upon the earth and dominates her. As you guys know, if you go to losdelcamino.net/galerias, you can also do it through the English, thewayofyahweh.org. You can reach this gallery, and there are certain images in Spanish and some others in English. In this case, I'm gonna go to the one called Universe, but the one in Spanish, I think, has more images. So I'm gonna use one of the Spanish ones to explain this point. So here we have certain quotes from the book of Hanoch from chapter 72. We will get to that eventually. Who knows when? But this is closer. I'm not saying this is a perfect map, but this is closer to being the true map of the earth, different than the regular one that they use in flat earth. Now, what I did was pretty much use one that they it's like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like taking one of the globe and turn it into a flat map. So it may look like a globe, but is not representing a globe. So see it as a flat surface, of course. See it as a flat surface. I want to make that clear. Now, if we see these as the four, like Yahweh made four corners. Those four corners are east, west, north, and south. And he made a circle in the middle of those four corners. as we see in Isaiah and other parts of scripture. This would be the circle. The blue, obviously, is water. Getting closer to the white would be the ice, and the lighter blue would be more water turning into ice the closer it gets to the wall. Now, also, I repeat, this is not a perfect map. There are differences in sizes of the continents, and there is even said that there is another continent, perhaps two more continents that wouldn't be found here. So the circle may be a lot bigger than it appears here. Just want to make that clear. So the book of Enoch tells us of six doors. Here you see 3 circles on the north and 3 circles on the south. Those would be the 6 doors through which the sun goes around. In the equinox, it gets to the middle where you see it, and it starts doing circles around the north. And then on the next month, it passes to the next door. And on the next month, it passes to the next door. So it gets closer to the north, and therefore the south is without light, because the sun would be making little circles above the north. But look how it would shine above most of the earth. Really, is only a part of the south that wouldn't get light, that really doesn't have much land. So very few people get to experience that, unless you go and travel there to see it, of course. Then after that, like, it makes 1 month in the orange circle, then another month, and then it goes back to the second one, and then to the yellow one. And that there we have the other equinox. We have an equinox on March and then on September. And after that equinox, it goes to the other circle, and it starts doing circles around the south until it gets to the third circle in the middle, where it leaves the north without light. All right. So the equinox happens when the sun is right in the middle. The solstice happens when the sun is on one of the two sides. So the middle happens on March and September normally. Well, yeah, always, but I mean in the Gregorian calendar. In our calendar, obviously, this would happen, like the sun would get to the middle when we are about to start the year. So at the beginning of the year for the spring, and then six months later to start the 7th month. That's why it happens on September. September used to be the 7th month. That's why it starts with sept, and October with 8, and then November with 9, and then December with 10. And I know it doesn't sound that close in English, but those beginnings of those months are actually numbers, the numbers that I just mentioned. That's why March would become really the 1st month, because January and February would be the 11th and 12th, since December is the 10th. Hope that's clear. So I came here to show this. Also, look how on the right side, you see the thing that says analemma. That is a shape that is formed by taking pictures of the sun throughout the whole year. That's how the sun appears on the sky. If you put all the pictures together, it forms something close to the 8. So you see, when it's right in the middle of the 8, that's the equinox. When it's doing the circle, which is the smaller circle, that is when it's away from the person. And when he's making the bigger circle is when the sun is doing the circles closer to the person that is taking the image. So that's why you can see this image throughout the year, because it makes an 8 above the earth. So during the summer, you see how, well, the colors that I use in orange, that's when the sun is in the summer. And that is when the land under it is having the most heat. And you see how there is more land on the north than on the south. That's why during the summer, most of the earth is under heat, because that's when the sun is going around. I hope that is clear. If you go then to this other image, you see the square with the north, south, east, and west. Once again, remember, this is a flat surface, even though it may look like a sphere because of how we have been programmed and because of the image where I took it, of course. Here you can see the 6 doors in green numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The 6 doors that Hanoch will mention. You see the moon, how throughout its cycle, it gets filled with light, and then light is taken away from it until it comes back to the middle and starts being filled with light. So the closer it gets to the middle, starts getting filled with light. The far away it gets from the middle, starts being emptied of its light. And then you can see the months in which the sun and the moon are in each of those gates. So on the 1st and 6th month is on the 4th gate. On the 2nd and 5th month is on the 5th gate. On the 3rd and 4th month is on the 6th gate. So the first 3 months are spring, and then comes summer. So 1, 2, 3 to begin the summer. So 4, 5, 6 is the summer. 4, 5, 6 is the summer. So you see why the heat will be all over the earth when it is on the 6th, 5th, and 4th door or gate of the sun. So that's why 364 days, 52 Shabbatot, spring, summer, winter, and fall. 91 days each of the seasons. 90 days for the season and 1 day to switch from one season to the next. Hope all of that is clear. 13 Shabbatot per season. 13 represents the number 1 because it is the numerical value of Echad, which is Hebrew for 1. Yahweh Echad, Yahweh is 1. Numerical value 13. 13 Shabbatot or Shabbats per season. And here you can see the malach that is on each side, for there are 4 malachim surrounding the throne, just like 4 malachim on the 4 corners of the earth. The east is the lion, is the front. That's why the sun comes from the east. The ox is the back, Aharon, the last, the west. The man is the south, and the eagle is the north. And there are several other things that you can see there. What I write in Hebrew right next to it is the tribe that each of these animals represent, or sides or corners of the earth. And also the names that are given to those corners. Like east has several names, for instance, Kedem, Kedema, Kadim, Miserach. I may be switching that into pronunciation a bit, but pretty much means the place where the sun rises. So that's how sometimes the east is called. Right next to the lion, it says Melech as king. Eagle says Malach as angel. The ox, Ebed, as servant. And Adam, man. So many other things that you can find there, some more knowledge. And just, let me see. Here, I pretty much show where it is on the 21st of June, which is the the summer solstice right here on the red, while the other side is completely in darkness. And then the north is in darkness when on the 21st of December is on the south. And that's why they see it as the death of the sun, because most of the land sees it in a dimmer way because it's farther away from them, from each of these lands. So for 3 days, it represents that it's dead, and then it rises when it starts getting closer and closer to once again the equinox. And in the middle when the equinox happens, which is in March. And oh, this is wrong and I just saw it. Oh, I'm gonna have to fix this. It's March and September. I wrote June. I'm gonna have to fix this. Oh, that's bad. But anyways, just so you guys know, it shouldn't be June, it should be September, right? Last one. Look how the shape that the sun would, well, make by doing those two circles could be seen as two spots for the 2 feet of the Most High, since the heavens, the firmament, is his throne, and the footstool is the earth. So that's why there are 2 circles on north and south. And remember that north and south is right and left. So that's why the right and left all over the footstool. Just like also Sinai and Horeb. So 6 months on one side, 6 months on the other side, representing the first and the last. The first 6 months would be from the 1st to the 6th, and the second 6 months from the 7th to the 12th. Hope all of that is clear. Eventually, I guess we will go back to those images to see some more information. Now going back to Hanoch. So, and again, examine the days of the summer, how the heat of the sun is upon the earth and dominates her. So we just saw how most of the land on the earth is covered by the sun throughout the summer, while the winter is when the sun goes to the south, where there is not much land. So that's why most people in the world experience cold when the sun is away from those lands where they are. So, and as for you, you will crave shade and shelter on account of the heat of the sun. And the earth shall burn with scorching heat, and you are not able to walk on the earth or on the rock on account of the heat. And also, this could be taken, well, or connected at least to how the scripture says that in the end times, the sun would get hotter and hotter because of the sins of the people. Because of the sins of the people, the sun would get hot and start killing through the heat. Scorching heat would end up killing many people at the end of times. And it's even happening now already. Actually, there are several places that have drought and the heat is way too strong. So certain people are dying because of the heat already. There are news about it if you want to research it, but it will get worse and worse. And it is not global warming as they call it. It will be flat warming, but it's actually not global warming. The fact is that it is because the sun is heating up that the earth is getting hotter, but not because of the use of cars, because of the sin of people. So chapter 5, Hanoch chapter 5. Observe how the verdant trees are covered with leaves and they bear fruit. Pay attention concerning all things and know in what manner he fashioned them. All of them belong to him who lives forever. All of them belong to him who lives forever. His work proceeds and progresses from year to year. And all his work prospers and obeys him, and it does not change, but everything functions in the way in which Yahweh has ordered it. Once again, I repeat, he's talking about the entire nature. He's not talking just about the stars. And even if he were, he would be talking about, like I said, how they don't switch constellations. They don't change the shape. They remain the same. They move all together with the firmament throughout the night. It is talking about, like I said, how water is wet, how fire burns, how things fall, and all of that. Everything that happens is always the same. It has been the same. And that thing actually has made many atheists not believe in the Almighty, because everything happens the same. When Hanoch is actually telling us that's a sign that everything obeys one. All things in nature obey something, and that something is actually someone, the creator. So the fact that everything happens the way it happens should actually tell us that the Almighty Creator is ruling over everything. Yet to them, it all happened through a coincidence. It all happened because of the Big Bang. It just so happens that everything is perfect and keeps acting the same from the very beginning of time. So all of them belong to him who lives forever. His work proceeds and progresses from year to year, and all of his works prosper and obeys him. All of his work prospers and obeys him. Man is the only, and we could even include the angels, but in a different way. So I'll just say men, humans, are the only creation to which Yahweh gave complete free will to do whatever they want, for they are in his image and likeness. That's why he gave man free will, because he has the free will to create everything and to rule over everything as he pleases. So since he made us in his image and likeness, he gave us free will. But other than us, everything does whatever they are told. The animals act through instinct, but in the instinct is that which they were told to do. So everything happens because he says so. We are the only ones who can say, no, I don't believe it. And that's how atheists end up doing. Because of the gift that was given to us, they end up using it to rebel against the Most High, because perhaps they don't have, there are several reasons why, but it should be clear that there is a creator. There are so many ways in which it should be clear. In the DNA, for instance, we find the name of the Father, Creator, Yahweh. The fact that DNA is a code. A code doesn't just happen out of thin air. A code is written by someone with intellect. That's a language, has 4 letters. So that of DNA, I mean. So it should be clear, but they are blinded by their ego, by their pride, by their hate of that which is true, by the fact that they don't want to be judged, they want to do whatever they want, etc. So his work proceeds and progresses from year to year. So every year, not only things happen the same way as they did the previous year, but Yahweh, year to year, is making things happen in order to get to his ultimate plan, which we are about to reach, thankfully. So, and all his work prospers and obeys him, and it does not change, but everything functions in the way in which Yahweh has ordered it. And look at the seas. They do not part. They do not part. That's why when Moshe parted the sea was a huge miracle, because Yahweh stopped the way nature works, made it act different. And that's why it was so amazing. It is so amazing, and many people don't believe it. So those who cannot believe that there is a creator, because everything happens the way it happens, obeying him, so they cannot see the him that all things obey. They cannot see that. They are blind. Okay. They are blinded by the fact that all things happen the same. So since all things happen the same to them, which should confirm that there is a creator, but it's the opposite, they end up taking that to believe that there are no miracles. But if miracles happen all the time, they would say that that's a sign that there's no creator, for things happen in different ways all the time. So they're always trying to find a way not to believe. That's the point. So miracles are amazing because things change from what we see all the time. But the things happen all the time as they are because they obey Creator, Yahweh. The sea doesn't enter the land, the dry land, because Yahweh placed the sand as the limit for the sea. So the sea comes with a wave and then goes back, and comes with the wave trying to enter, but it cannot, for it obeys Yahweh. So, but everything functions in the way in which Yahweh has ordered it. And look at the seas, they do not part. They fulfill all their duties. But as for you have not been long suffering, and you have not done the commandments of Yahweh, but you have transgressed and spoken slanderously, grave and harsh words with your impure mouths against his greatness. Look how Hanoch, after saying everything that he just said, goes on to speak to all those who do not believe in the Most High and therefore are wicked. And I repeat, but as for you have not been long suffering, those who do not have mercy in them, those who are not going to repent, pretty much. But as for you have not been long suffering, and you have not done the commandments of Yahweh, but you have transgressed and spoken slanderously, grave and harsh words with your impure mouths against his greatness. Oh, you heart-hardened, may you not find peace. So he's talking to the wicked. Scripture tells us that there is no shalom for the wicked. There is no peace for the wicked. There is no rest for the wicked. And some of the wicked use that, I have heard it even in movies and stuff like that, as talking to, or meaning that they are pretty much addicts to work, that they work so much that they cannot rest. That's how many of them interpret it. So they take it as something good. They are such good workers, prosperous and all of that, that they cannot go and rest. They cannot sleep because they are thinking about business, money, women, this and that. Well, so just a second. It says, oh, you hard-hardened, may you not find shalom. So there is no rest, there is no shalom for the wicked. So like I said, they interpret it completely the wrong way. The fact is that we have rest because we have Yahweh, because we know who's the creator, who has control of all things. We can rest in him. But those who do not have him cannot rest. They are going back and forth here and there, trying to find peace, which they won't be able to find away from him, trying to fill that hole in their hearts with money and pleasures of the flesh. So may you, the wicked, not find shalom. Therefore, you shall curse your days. Those who are wicked will end up cursing their life, their own life, their days in this world, when they realize what they have done with them, the investment that they did with the life that Yahweh gave them. So, therefore, you shall curse your days, and the years of your life shall perish and multiply in eternal execration. That is amazing. They will be the waste of this reality. They will be discarded from this reality. But that for them will be eternal, not like most of them or many people believe that they will be destroyed, they won't exist. But when they enter eternity, that means anything is eternal. Only in this reality, things are temporal. Only in this reality. So that's why they can have the idea that destruction will be once and then it's done. Because in this reality, you can destroy something and tomorrow you won't have it. But there we will remain in eternity. There won't be change, like the change that happens here when one thing is in a way one day and the next day is different. Everything changes with time, but that is in the reality of time. We will enter the reality of the eternal. So destruction for the wicked will be eternal. That's why it says, therefore you shall curse your days and the year of your life, and the years of your life shall perish and multiply in eternal execration. So they will perish, but then they will multiply eternally when they are execrated. You shall curse your days and the years of your life shall perish and multiply in eternal execration. So they will fall in an eternal lake of fire. And there will not be any mercy unto you. And there will not be any mercy unto you. Also important, Yahweh is merciful, but there are certain people who do not deserve mercy, only justice. So that's why Yahweh will punish them without mercy, for they had no mercy. They used no mercy. They didn't know mercy. So, and there will not be any mercy unto you. Remember that with the death of the two witnesses, the door of mercy is closed. So that's why there won't be any mercy unto them who are now claiming that there is no creator because of the fact that everything obeys him, which is crazy. In those days, you shall make, listen to this, this is amazing. And this goes along with some of the prophecies. Well, yeah, mainly one of the prophets. In those days, you shall make your names an eternal execration unto all the righteous. So an eternal abomination unto all the righteous. In those days, you shall make your names. But it is not talking mainly about the name of each person, for there will be many who are wicked. And it's not like we're going to learn their names just to hate them. No. Well, one thing, we will know their names automatically. But the names that it is talking about here is talking about the names which they worship. The names that they use and worship, those names to us will be an abomination, like they are now, in fact. But in that time, it will be so clear that people will have it in their minds as something so obvious. Right now, you go and tell somebody about the name and they say that doesn't matter. That is not important, because Yahweh allows them to have their own opinion, even if it's as wrong as it is. Yahweh gives them free will to reject him, to reject the truth, to believe in their foolish heart and be pretty much deceived by their own heart or other people. So those names which they use now will become an abomination for all of us. Like now that we know, and they are already an abomination, that's why we don't mention them. We don't pronounce those names because they are an abomination. But there are certain ways of translating this verse or the other verse that I'm about to show, which some take as, you know how nowadays people use curse words and they're very, very bad words, like either they're saying something very bad about a person or their mother, or they use, even they try but they miss it, they use the name that they worship as a curse word, like when in Hollywood and a lot of those movies it happens, and then a lot of people copy it. They even dare to say, and I mean I'm so amazed when I hear it, those people who believe that God is the one, okay, they believe God is the one, and they dare to say many times, my effing God, or they say they believe in Jesus Christ and they say Jesus effing. How do they dare? I mean, it's amazing to me. If they actually believe that there is one who is creator, almighty, and his son who came and died, how can they dare to say that way? So imagine what they will go through. And that's why, just like they use those names as curses, they will be to us in that time. Those names that to them are supposed to be, as they say, holy, but in fact, they use it as curses. And they still don't see that when they worship, they are actually cursing. They don't actually see the connection. Why would those words come when they want to curse? So, in Zephaniah 1 first, it says, and I shall stretch out my hand against Yahudah and against all the inhabitants of Jerusalem and cut off every trace of the Lord, right? Because Baal means the Lord in English. So, and I will cut off every trace of the Lord from this place. The names of the idolatrous priests with the priests. So those who commit idolatry with the Lord, those who worship the Lord, and the names which they worship. For remember, also the great whore has several names of blasphemy, just like the beast. They have names of blasphemy, and the mark of the beast has the number 666, which is the numerical value of the name of the image of the beast. So the name, they will worship the name of the beast and the several names of blasphemy which are on the head, and that of the great whore of Babylon. So the Almighty is telling us here that those who worship the Lord will be taken out, and their names, the names that they worship, will be destroyed. Also in Zephaniah 3:9 says, for then I shall turn unto the peoples a clean lip, meaning he would clean our mouth from dirty names. For then I shall turn unto the peoples a clean lip, so that they call on the name of Yahweh to serve him with one shoulder. And well, the other one that I wanted to show was from Hosea 2:17. It says, and I shall remove the names of the lords from her mouth, and they shall no more be remembered by their name. And they shall no more be remembered by their name. On Zechariah 13:2. Still, there are like a couple more verses that I would like to show you, but I will continue after this one. Zechariah 13:2 says, and it shall be in that day, declares Yahweh of hosts, that I cut off the names of the idols from the earth. This is important because many times there are so many verses where the Almighty talks about the idols and destroying the idols and the idols and the idols being destroyed. But here he doesn't just say that he will destroy the idols. He says that he will destroy the names of the idols. So that's huge, because if I ask anybody, does Jesus, the name Jesus, have an image, an idol done for it? Yeah, of course. Long hair on a cross, but there are several versions of that image. But there is an image, and everybody knows the image of Jesus. If I tell anybody the word Jesus, they will have an image on their minds of a white person, skinny, with long hair and other things, other similarities, like those that they have placed in movies and pictures and all of that. So if the name Jesus has an image, then that means that the name Jesus will be destroyed. If God has an image, it will be cut off. And he does have an image. They have it in the Catholic Church. Mary has an image, destroyed also. The name Mary, the name, in this case, God, which I know they use it as a title, but we know is a name. The name Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, etc. All those idols who have a name, they will be destroyed. And you know, it is very interesting how, remember when Paul entered a place where he saw everybody worshiping all types of idols, and there was an idol which had no name, and it was to the unknown Elohim, to the one that they didn't know. So there was an image, and we could say a generic one, in the sense of they were fearful of not giving worship or adoration to an Elohim who would then get angry and perhaps cause them harm. So they added an image and said, this is to the one which we don't know about. When Paul entered, he said, I come to teach you about the one who you don't know about, the one who created all things, and who tells us not to make images, for instance. But he came to tell them, the one that you don't know about is the one who made all things, and that's the one that I come to teach about. So it's interesting that Yahweh and the prophet said, I will destroy all the names of the images. Yet that image with which Paul used to, well, the fact that they had something that said the one that we don't know, Paul used that fact to teach about the true mighty one. So Paul used it in a very great way, not to worship it, but to give understanding to those who would worship it, the image instead of the creator of all things. So my point is that, in a sense, that image wouldn't be included in this verse, for that image didn't have a name. And Paul connected it with the name that won't be ever destroyed, for it is the name of the eternal one. So, and it shall be in that day, declares Yahweh of hosts, that I cut off the names of the idols from the earth, and they shall be remembered no more. And I shall also remove the prophets and the unclean spirit from the earth. Isaiah 65:15. Listen to this and how it connects with what we are reading. 65:15. And you shall leave your name. And you shall leave your name. We can take that as their personal name, but it's actually mainly speaking about the name that they worship. And you shall leave your name. Remember that the name of Yahweh, which we worship, is pronounced over us as Yahudim, those who worship Yahweh. And not only that, when I bless you guys with the priestly blessing of numbers, I am pronouncing the name over you guys, even though you're far away and everything. Yahweh knows. So, and you shall leave your name as a curse to my chosen. The chosen few will see the false name that they worship as a curse. And you shall leave your name as a curse to my chosen, for the sovereign Yahweh shall put you to death and call his servants by another name. For instance, they call themselves Jews. We are Yahudim. And that's just to say one, but there are several, like many ways in which this verse can be interpreted. Also, when it comes to the false names, like if a person is named Jesus, which happens a lot, Yahweh will give that person a new name, as we see in Revelation 2 and 3. So there are many names which have a negative connotation. So that's why Yahweh will give a new name to many, well, to all his chosen. Now going back to Hanoch, and you just saw hopefully how similar this verse of Isaiah is to that of Hanoch. In those days you shall make your names an eternal execration or an abomination or a curse unto all the righteous, and the sinners shall curse you continually, you together with the sinners. Unto all the righteous, and the sinners shall curse you continually, you together with the sinners. As well, this last part, I would like to see it on another version. But look how it says, and the sinners shall curse you continually, as they do nowadays, because of what we teach. There are many people who want to remain in sin, and even sadly, people who are believers, who claim to be believers, who claim to believe in the scriptures and everything like that. When we tell them, for instance, that it is a sin to confess a false name, it is a sin to call Yahweh Lord, because he would be calling him Baal, which he tells us not to do. If we tell a person that it is a sin and that person says, no, it doesn't matter to me it is no sin, but it is to Yahweh, and he's the one who judges, but they don't care. So they remain as sinners, and they hate us, and as Yahushua said, persecute us because of his name. You will be hated because of my name, he said. So that's why it says, and the sinners shall curse you continually, you together with the sinners. In those days, it says, in those days, your name shall mean eternal condemnation for all the righteous. And by means of your names shall the condemned be perpetually cursed. And by your names shall all the errant and the irreverent swear. So you see how it ended very differently. That's why it seemed weird when I read it. This is the one I'm seeing right now is the one that I told you guys how they sometimes write some comments that I don't agree with, yet there are some other ones that are good. So I have an issue with it. And also because certain names appear very different. And I also, well, their English version is better than the Spanish version. So that's why I also had like kind of an issue with the Spanish one, but in this case, the English one is not that bad. So would it be okay with you guys if I think we haven't read that much. So would it be okay if I just read from the first to where we are right now from this other version, just in case we find something else like too different? So chapter 1, we're seeing the other one. You see how it says Hanok with a CH, and some people end up pronouncing Chanok. Also, this person writes a W right next to where the Vav is. Because of the pronunciation of the Vav, he commonly writes a W right next to what the Vav would be. So that's why there's a W after the O. I will read till the point where we are so that we can close with the study. The word of blessing which Hanok blessed, the word of blessing with which Hanok blessed the righteous chosen, who shall live in the day of the trouble, when all the wicked and irreverent will be rejected, whereas the righteous shall be delivered. As it says here, this when it is written this way, are restorations from other translations. So he pretty much, that's one of the things that I like about this translation. He used the different versions of the book in order to get to the best translation of it. So Hanok is a righteous man whose eyes were opened by the power, meaning by Elohim, by El, which means power. Saw the vision of the pure one, meaning the Kadosh, who from the heavens spoke with his word, and he responded. The vision of the pure one of the heavens was revealed to me, and I heard all the words of the watchers and the pure ones, the Kadoshim. And because I listened, I have learned all the things from them and understood what I saw, that what I am speaking of will not take place in this generation, but in the generation which is to succeed at a distant period to come. It is about the chosen. So you see how, even though we're saying the same things with a little bit of different words, gives us a little bit of other insight. That's why it's always important, because the same things happens with scriptures, to look at other translations or even the concordance to get more understanding from each of the words that we find, depending on how deep you want to get into scriptures, of course. It is about the chosen that I speak, and for them that I pronounce my message. The pure and mighty one shall come from his habitation. The eternal power shall tread the earth upon Mount Sinai, and he shall appear with his great army and be manifested in the strength of his force from the heights of the heavens. And all shall be afraid with great fear and trembling. Even the watchers shall be terrified. Even the watchers, meaning even the certain type of angels who had a job, but they didn't do it well, so they will be judged, so they will be terrified. And all shall be afraid with great fear and trembling. Even the watchers shall be terrified, and they shall be seized and be punished in the confines of the earth. And they shall be seized and be punished in the confines of the earth. That is where the watchers are now, confined. And they will be allowed to, they will be released during the fifth trumpet to destroy the earth. And they shall be seized and punished in the confines of the earth, and even to the ends of the earth. The lofty mountains shall be cracked up, and the exalted hills shall crumble, and shall be lowered, and shall melt like a honeycomb in the flame. So there are several connections with Nahum 1:5, Psalms. The earth shall split open, and all the things that are on the land shall perish. The earth shall split open, and all the things that are on the land shall perish. For there shall come judgment upon all, even upon all the righteous. We saw that regarding the many, remember? But with them shall he have made shalom. But with them, remember in the other one, it said with the elect, but he will preserve the elect. Here he writes remnant to show how those are the ones that he will preserve. Yet he shall protect the chosen ones. Oh, what I just said. So, yet he shall protect the chosen ones, and upon them shall the clemency relapse, or the mercy. Then all of them, and in this case, he writes here the seventh trumpet, which is when the chosen few are harvested, right? So that is when it says, yet he shall protect the chosen ones. When? During the seventh trumpet. So I agree with that part, of course. I already mentioned it earlier. Then all of them shall belong to Yahweh, the power. Shall be happy and blessed. He will help them, and all the splendor of the power, and all the splendor of the power's person, or the person of Elohim, meaning Mashiach, shall illuminate them. It said the light will illuminate them. Like I said, that is the person of Yahweh, which is Mashiach, Yahushua. Chapter 2. Look at Yahweh, for he comes with 10,000s. You see what I have told you? It didn't say millions, it said thousands. For he comes with 10,000s of his pure ones to execute judgment upon all. So that can be interpreted both as coming the chosen, the last with the chosen few, the 144,000. So 10,000s, meaning tens of thousands, pretty much. And also can be interpreted as during the war of Harmageddo, coming to fight. So look at Yahweh, for he comes with 10,000s of his pure ones to execute judgment upon all, and he shall annihilate the wicked, and he shall punish all who are fleshly concerning all the wicked deeds that they have committed wickedly, and concerning all the harsh words which wicked errant ones have spoken against him. And this right here was quoted by John in the book of John. Chapter 3. Observe all the things that occur in the heavens. Observe all the things that occur in the heavens, how that the heavenly luminaries do not change their paths. Look how it's understood even better in this translation. They do not change their paths. They go the same way. That each rises and sets regularly, everyone at its proper period, without transgressing the commands they received. Look at the earth and pay attention to its works from the beginning to the end, how none of the works of Yahweh, the power, Yahweh Elohim, changes, and all are visible for you. It's interesting that here, the fact that it says Yahweh, the power, it would be Yahweh El, perhaps Yahweh Elohim, but I believe that this person writes powers when it is Elohim. So it is possible that it says Yahweh El, though it seems weird because it doesn't appear like that in scriptures. It's mostly Yahweh Elohim. But I say that because in Hebrew, the word for nature has the same numerical value as the numerical value of Elohim, because Yahweh made nature as Elohim or through Elohim. So here it's talking about nature and how it obeys. So he mentions the name Elohim because it is to Elohim or through Elohim that nature was created, and that's why nature and Elohim both have the same numerical value. How none of the works of Yahweh, the power changes, and all are visible for you. Look at the signs of summer and winter, how the entire earth is filled with water, and that the cloud, the dew, and the rain refresh it. Chapter 4. Consider and look at every tree, how each appears to wither, and every leaf falls off, except of 14 trees, which are not deciduous, which wait with the old leaf until the appearance of the new leaf for 2 or 3 winters. For 2 or 3 winters, which it could be connected at least with the first 3.5 years, the 3 years or 3 winters. And that's interesting because 3.5 years, depending on when they start, would only have 3 winters because they would end right before the next winter. So the 3.5 years of the 2 witnesses as those whose leaves don't fall and they come to give water of life, that of Yahushua, the testimony, to the chosen few so that they can also become like David, kings and priests, like those 14 trees, because 14, the numerical value of David, whose leaves do not fall. Chapter 5. And this is the one where we have, oh no, this is number 4 in the previous book, in the previous translation, just in case. And again, consider the signs of summer, how during it, the luminary orb, meaning the sun, well, since they worship the sun, that is the reason why he mainly mentions, like gives it this name, luminary orb, just so you guys know. How during it, the luminary orb burns and scalds. Then while the earth is scorched up with fervent heat, you seek for a covered and shady spot on account of the burning luminary orb, the sun, without finding a way to walk either upon the ground or upon the rocks because of the heat. Chapter 6, which was the 5th on the previous translation. Consider and see how the trees, when they have put forth their green leaves, become covered and produce fruit. Understand and consider all of these works and know that the power who lives forever has done all these things for you. How all his works continue at the beginning of every year always. How all his works continue at the beginning of every year always. And that all his works obey him without alterations. So all things happen as Yahweh the power has decreed. All things happen as Yahweh the power has decreed. See also how the seas and the rivers in the same way fulfill and do not change their respective tasks according to his commandments. But ye change his commandments, the wicked, of course. But ye change his commandments, like the Jewish people who made the commandments of men because of the interpretations of the flesh through the letter, while the letter kills, but the spirit gives life. That's why they didn't accept Mashiach, for they didn't recognize him, for they had a different Torah according to their wrong interpretations. So, but ye change his commandments and do not have the word of Yahweh. They change his commandments. That's why they don't have Yahushua, who is the word of Yahweh, according to Revelation 19:13. But ye change his commandments and do not do, I said have. You change his commandments and do not do the word of Yahweh. And instead, you have distorted and slandered his greatness. Those who do not fulfill his commandments and do not do the word of Yahweh, therefore, meaning they do not act like Yahushua. Instead, they distort and slander his greatness. Here, it's a connection with Romans 1:20-25 and Yahuanan 14-28. If I were to read that, it would take a long time to study. So it's up to you guys, but it's there for you guys to go and check it, and you can make questions next week if you guys want. And look how he writes Yahuchanan, as in instead of Yohanan, Yahuchanan. Yet the many symbols that he adds makes a lot of people get confused about how to pronounce these names, because he adds the W, the CH, plus those things on top of the A's, plus the Well, everything that you see right there. But anyways, it says, and instead you have distorted and slandered his greatness with malignant and haughty words from your polluted mouths against his majesty. You harden in heart. There shall be no shalom for you. There shall be no shalom for you, no peace, completeness, or reconciliation for the wicked. Just like there is no peace, no rest for the wicked, like I already said. Therefore, shall you curse your days, and the years of your lives shall be wasted. They don't invest in that which is eternal. So everything that they invest their time in is pretty much a waste, for it will be over with at some point pretty soon. Therefore shall you curse your days, and the years of your lives shall be wasted. But the years of your destruction shall be multiplied, because they will be eternal. But the years of your destruction shall be multiplied, while they expect to be destroyed, and that's it. No, their destruction will be eternal. They will be destroyed forever. But the years of your destruction shall be multiplied like an eternal condemnation, like an eternal condemnation. And you shall not obtain favor or shalom. You shall not obtain favor of, sorry, and you shall not obtain favor or shalom. In those days, your name shall mean eternal condemnation for all the righteous. Once again, we are in that verse, and look how he mentioned it. Yeshayahu 65, 11 through 16. We read just a couple verses from there. Let me see if I still have it open. Let me just read. Yeah, Isaiah 65 from 11 through 16. I read, but you are those who forsake Yahweh, who forget my set apart mountain. And I'm gonna have to show it because this is huge. So look, verse 11 through 16. But you are those who forsake Yahweh, who forget my set apart mountain, meaning his kingdom, what he has prepared. But instead it says, who prepare a table for God and who fill a drink offering for many. God is God. People worship. You could change that A for an O and it would be the same. God is the Hebrew for fortune, so it is the God of fortune. And many is the God of destiny. So God and many, fortune and destiny, that's whom they worship. And that's why, for instance, money could be said to come from many, because through money, you can control your many according to their beliefs. They believe that with money, they can control their destiny. And it's interesting that in the money, in the $1 bill, it is written, in God they trust. Well, you know how they write it, but I'm not going to say it. So in God they trust, right on the money. No pun intended. Right on the $1 bill. In God they trust. That God is the OCNI over the pyramid, which happens to be Lucifer. So in God they trust, because Lucifer is the mighty one of fortune. That's why he told Mashiach that everything was given to him regarding this reality, and he could give it to anybody who he wanted to give it to. And that's why he told Mashiach, if you bow down to me, I will give it to you. But Mashiach rejected it. The Illuminati didn't. And that's why they have the control over the world. That's why they control the money. And that's why they say that they trust in God, because God gave them the power. And they made everybody else worship God, thinking that they are worshiping the creator, the true creator, the almighty. For the Masons, all, of course, worship Lucifer as the great architect of the universe. So in the money, like many, they write that they worship God. So we see it here pretty clearly. And look how in this verse he's already talking about how they worship God instead of Yahweh. They forgot about Yahweh to go and worship God. And then verse 12 says, and I shall allot you to the sword and let you all bow down to the slaughter, because I called and you did not answer. Because they were answering to God, not to Yahweh. When they were told that they should have called Yahweh, they were like, no, doesn't matter. I will continue to call God. But they don't read scriptures and they don't research, because even when they read it, they see here God and they're like, no, that's with an A, even though it sounds just the same. It's an A. I'll continue. Or they read fortune and they don't realize that in Hebrew is God. So, and I shall allot you to the sword and let you all bow down to the slaughter, because I called you and you did not answer. I spoke and you did not hear, and you did evil before my eyes and chose that in which I did not delight. Therefore, thus said the sovereign Yahweh, see, my servants eat, but you hunger. That is amazing. And it will be this that I am reading, perhaps will be fulfilled by next year. And if not, the year after that. And even if it fulfills the next year, it will continue, of course, because he will give us food. Yet the world will hunger, as we read in the third seal of Revelation 6. Therefore, thus says the sovereign Yahweh, see, my servants eat, but you hunger. See, my servants drink, but you thirst. Because for hundreds of years, it has been the other way around. They have eaten and made Yahweh's servants and Yahweh's people hungry. So, see, my servants drink, but you thirst. See, my servants rejoice, but you are put to shame. See, my servants sing for joy of heart, but you cry for sorrow of heart and wail for breaking of spirit. And you shall leave your name as a curse to my chosen, for the sovereign Yahweh shall put you to death and call his servants by another name. So that he who blesses himself in the earth does bless himself in the Elohim of truth, because they are now blessing themselves in the Elohim of falsehood. God, Lord, and other false names. So that he who blesses himself in the earth does bless himself in the Elohim of truth. And he who swears in the earth does swear by the Elohim of truth, because the former distresses shall be forgotten, and because they shall be hidden from my eyes. So, going back to Hanoch, to close with the chapter, I think. In those days, your name shall mean eternal condemnation for all the righteous, and by means of your names shall the condemned be perpetually cursed. And by means of your names shall the condemned be perpetually cursed. So because of the names that they worship, they will be cursed. But no, the names are not important, they say. It's amazing. It's everywhere. And they still say it doesn't matter. And it's so sad that they don't care to read. And it is sad that even when you show them, they don't see it. It's amazing. So, and by means of your names shall the condemned be perpetually cursed. And by your names shall all the errant and the irreverent swear. Right now, nowadays, people, those who are errant, those who are wrong, swear by the false names. And by your name shall the errant and the irreverent swear. For the chosen ones, there shall be light, joy, and shalom, and they shall inherit the earth. In a way like what we just saw in Isaiah. So we see how Isaiah was speaking about the same thing in the same time. They shall inherit the earth. But for you, you impure, there shall be condemnation. Then the wisdom shall be granted to the chosen ones. So all wisdom will be given to us. Here it says a note. Note the distinction between the righteous chosen ones and the chosen ones in this verse, who are presently the Christians who haven't yet believed on his name. So he's pretty much talking about the many here, like the Christians who haven't believed on his name. And he says, see 1:7, how his clemency relapses on them, which is they're being grafted in again at the seventh trumpet, meaning the fact that the door of mercy will be closed, so the many will be killed during the 30 days of Hosea 5:7, the great tribulation. But after that, Yahweh will give them mercy when he resurrects them and forgives them because of the righteousness in their heart, because of their belief in Mashiach. So, which it says, which is their being grafted again at the seventh trumpet, resurrection, meaning when they are resurrected during the seventh trumpet, they will be part once again of the people. After the sixth seal judgment, for denying his name, meaning that the sixth seal, which will be huge, and it happens as I have explained at the beginning of the millennium, that will be because of denying his name. The judgment will get harder on the world on the sixth trumpet. So I agree with that comment. And he says, then the wisdom shall be granted to the chosen ones, and all of them shall live, and they shall not again transgress. So once again, it's talking about the many who were chosen as righteous after their death. That's why it says they shall not transgress again, as in they were transgressing by not accepting the name. And all of them shall live, and they shall not again transgress by irreverence or pride, which is the reason why they transgress nowadays. When you tell them about the name, they have so much pride in what they claim to know or other things that they don't accept it. They are irreverent. They even blaspheme. They even laugh and mock us because of what we are teaching them. And all of them shall live, and they shall not again transgress by irreverence or pride. Instead, they who are wise shall be humble, and they shall not repeat transgression. In any case, obviously, even the chosen few at some point in time were in the apostasy. At some point in time were in falsehood. So we acted at some point with pride in life. I mean, and irreverence. Of course, we have made mistakes. So we could even interpret it as the fact that the chosen few will no longer, once accepting his name and fulfilling his commandments, and then the harvest, of course, will no longer ever have even the possibility of doing any wrong, as nowadays, because of being in the flesh, in this reality and many other things, we can still do wrong. We shouldn't, but the possibility is there for slipping on the way. So, nor error, nor be condemned. So I'll go back. And they shall not repeat transgression, nor error, nor be condemned the entire period of their lives. And we will live forever. So no longer will there be any condemnation, nor die in torment and indignation of the power. The Almighty will never get angry at us ever again. So there won't be any torment or indignation from Elohim. But they shall complete the sum of the days of their lives. And their life shall be increased in shalom. While the years of their happiness shall be multiplied with continual joy and shalom. Multiply. So we will be joyful the first day in eternity, but we will be more joyful the next day. And the next day, there will be more joy even than the previous 2 days. And that will go for eternity. Scripture also tells us in the New Covenant that hope is eternal. Knowledge will be done with, will be completed in the sense that we will receive all knowledge. It will be finished. It's finite. But hope is eternal, just like love. So when it comes to hope, it means that we will eternally be hoping for better things. Not that we will have bad things. It's just that hope will remain eternally. So we'll continue to hope for more, for better, for greater. So we will be completely happy. But then we will realize next day that we could be even happier. We will go through different realities, and every reality will be better than the previous reality. And no reality that is created after this one will ever have pain or sin, ever. This is the only reality in which that would happen, and that's why Yahweh made it the first one. So the years of their happiness shall be multiplied with continual joy and peace for all the days of their lives. Remember that we will keep the free will. Yahweh will allow us to remain having free will, but we won't have the inclination to do evil, and there won't be a Satan tempting us. The flesh will not tempt us, so the possibility of it will be pretty much null. However, there will be free will, so that's why the way it speaking right here is like we can connect it to Isaiah, how if a person dares to blaspheme, he will die at 100 years. Blaspheme against the Ruach HaKodesh pretty much, which is the only unforgivable sin of this reality and the next, as Yahushua told us. So a person could sin on the next life because every person will have free will. It will be virtually impossible, but it is possible because of the free will and because there is one sin that is unforgivable, and because of that sin people could die. So Isaiah tells us that there won't be any children dying, and the child that dies will die at 100 years. So a person of 100 years will still be a child. But if that person dies, it's because that person decided to sin and be cut off from that reality. Obviously, that makes no sense in the sense of a person that would do that. And that's why I say it virtually won't happen. But Isaiah tells us of the possibility. So we will see when we are in the millennium and then in eternity, if that possibility becomes a reality for anybody. I guess for us, it will be completely amazing and surprising to see if it gets to happen ever. So that's how we finished with this chapter, and the next one starts getting even better. So I guess we can close here tonight and continue next week with chapter 7 now. This translation, chapter 6 on the previous translation.